junk food.
Less junky than American, I'm afraid.
You start.
No, I will start.
What's that? It's all brick cookies.
Yes. Ed help himself. And everyone should help with Jaffa cakes or jam
Everyone's
potatoes.
down to the audience.
So please do.
Audience needs refreshments.
Yeah,
And some
very
sugar as
good.
well to keep you guys awake.
Very good. Yeah, Paramount Plus panel doesn't give away free brick cookies.
Yeah.
You came to the right place.
That'd be
folks.
great. Pretty much. That
Well, yeah. Bribes. They're bribes.
right, that's it.
Ed, help you got Jaffa cakes, which are not cakes. Well, they're cakes or biscuits. They're ongoing debates.
Huh. Yeah, I used to be in this biz.
Rob?
You had me in chocolate.
Well, of course. Dan,
I've had it before, but yes.
I'm sure you have.
Yeah.
You ever read Dragon's Rainbow?
No, you're talking about the Thomas Pynchon book. No, I've read, I think it was V. One about
Yeah, I like that one. It's not Dragon's Rainbow because on a 3-page extended round about the shortcomings of British junk food.
I mean, it's not junky enough.
I was looking for a secret was being rationed.
Oh, okay.
Like nasty.
But it's weird.
Tasha's gonna be so
Oh,
pissed.
it's
She's like, they're giving out candy calories on this thing too. I'm like, yep, you got
And
it.
has everyone got one?
No, well, this is
Take some Jaffa cakes.
yeah.
It's delicious. That Jeffy.
It's a technically cake.
Jaffa
not
cake.
biscuit.
In a moment. Yes, in a moment.
Is it the
Fair
way round?
enough.
Who hasn't had anything?
They're quite low in terms of calories.
Oh, are they?
They never pass muster as an American.
Yeah, I don't believe
Let's try
that.
the other thing.
Thank you for smuggling them in.
Yes, contraband.
Breakfast to cherry.
Yeah, thank you.
More ladies.
Indeed.
Okay.
I guess we can get started.
All right, good. Hey, welcome everybody. So glad to start your New York Comic Con 2023 with the Tripwire panel. So glad to have you here. Some great faces in the audience. Thank you all very much for coming. Starting your day. My name's Ed Cato, and I am thrilled for this panel. You know, in the world of comics, there's an element of personal passion, and then the folks who do really well have a high level of creativity and also a high level of perseverance. And that's really what today's panel is all about: creativity and perseverance, and celebrating the industry that we all love. That's why you're here on day one of New York Comic Con. Allow me to start the Tripwire 30th anniversary panel with a round of hellos to our esteemed guests. Can I please start with you, Joel? If you can introduce yourself to this crowd and tell them who you are and what you do.
Yes, of course. I'm Joel Meadows. I'm the editor-in-chief of Tripwire. I'm doing this since 1992. I actually did bring, this is our very first issue, which we published in February of 1992, which has a typo on it, which is logo's back. Rather than so it looked.
You didn't have to tell anyone that.
Well, I did. People just wasn't anyway. So this was quite antediluvian, and then this was the issue that we did in June. So you can see it's come quite a long way.
Oh my gosh.
So we started life as a fanzine, a very basic A4 fanzine. We did it at local printers, and it developed, and I've actually brought. This was from December of 1994, probably before some of you were even born. And it's just developed as the years have progressed. So we started life with comics and music. We dubbed the music because we had a parting of the ways with the guy who used to do the music.
Oh, sure.
We swapped it for TV and film, and it was a much better fit. So we've done 60 issues in print.
Wow.
So 2 anniversary books as well. So
That's fantastic. Can't wait to hear all about it. Joel, good to have you here. Andy, you also came from overseas. So good to have you here.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, could you give us just a little background on your what you've done and who you are and why you're so passionate about this?
Oh, I've been a fan of American comics since I was about 10. It took me a very long time ago, about 50 years ago, and been collecting on and off ever since. And got to know Joel a long time ago. He's sort of right-hand man, senior editor. I do mostly writing about mostly the old stuff. I do movie reviews and TV reviews, but mainly the focus is I do the old stuff. If there's anything pre-1970, that's my thing.
Yeah.
And or maybe 1980 actually. So I focus on that. I'm kind of very nerdy about all that stuff. Nearly exclusively American comics, but So he's more on the more modern stuff. But we share an interest in everything. I mean, we still find something great that's new, then it's exciting even now, even at this late stage and so forth, it's still exciting to see that. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Good to have you here. Let's go here to my immediate right, Dan Barry. Dan, glad to have you come from California. Thanks for joining us today.
I'm the editor on the convention collective for the Sandbox, which handles all the pop culture stuff like movies, TVs, comics, all that stuff. And then I'm also one of the senior correspondents, so I go across the country, do various Comic-Cons, including this one, just report on them and how they are, and try to interview creators.
Yeah, fantastic. And how long have you been doing this all day?
Nowhere near as long as them, only about 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, wow. Well, that's a lifetime in this nutty industry, right?
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Good.
Good.
You work with Leonard Sultan, is it?
Correct, yes.
He's another Brit who sadly couldn't. He doesn't live in New York, but he does a lot of amazing work. He has a sort of video show about comics. He's a great panel host. He has a lot of panel hosts hosting in the States,
Yeah.
which is understandable. So Milan's a great guy. We wanted to represent a more broader kind of comic church where we've got Dan and we've got Rob. So
Yeah, fantastic. Dan, it's much pleasure to have you. And at the far end, we have a comic convention panelist favorite, none other than Rob Selkowitz. He did his undergrad here in the Big Apple years ago. Since then, he's had
Many years ago.
many years, illustrious career, sharing his wisdom and knowledge and insights on so many topics. Rob, can you do a little better job on the introduction than I just did, please?
Sure. So my name is Rob Stockwitz. I write for that grubby comics fanzine Forbes. If you had told me when I was a fan growing up that I would be writing about the business of comics for Forbes and that of the like 20,000 contributors to the Forbes website, that this would be in the top 0.1% of traffic on the site, because people come to Forbes to read about comics and the business of comics, I would not know what any of the words in that sentence meant in that order. But I actually got started writing for Comic Buyer's Guide back in the 90s, and I also write for ICB2, which is the trade publication of the comics business, which is hosting some business-oriented events later today that I'll be involved in, and I occasionally do some stuff for Publishers Weekly, and as I mentioned, I have written a bunch of books, including a book called Comic-Con and the Business of Pop Culture, which is unsurprisingly about Comic-Con and the business of pop culture. So I am delighted to be part of the celebration here. I've been a fan and reader of Tripwire since I have known you, Joel, which is maybe 10 or 12
probably
years.
a few years. Well, welcome. I'm glad you can make it. As well.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah, fantastic. In fact, I think we have 2 students who used your books for a textbook back in the day. Is that right? Yeah.
Captive audience.
Yeah, great. Well, good. Well, hey, we're an esteemed crew, right? Excited to jump right into it. I'd like to just show a little bit of the visuals to get us going, and then we'll talk. Oh, yeah.
There we go. Right, so this is a selection of old covers, starting right at the beginning. So this is the first issue. It was a Frank Whiteley cover, the series called 2020 Visions, back in '97. The Preacher, Alan Moore, that was designed to be a pastiche of an old Victorian circus poster. It's a Grendel cover. Dark Knight Strikes Again. That's Alan Moore with his head stuck on an old Edwardian photograph. Doctor Who, James Bond. We couldn't use the James Bond, so that's why we had a gun. Hellboy, Grendel, and this is the latest one. This is the Sandman cover. So you can see the progression over 30 plus years. It's changed rather dramatically.
Yeah, very good. When did you start using the standard logo that we're so familiar with now?
I think it might have been the Frank Miller issue. We used to think we had different. I haven't got them on there, but we used to use different logo each issue, and that was bad news for branding. As you yourself, as a man who's an expert in business, branding is very important. As you can see, that we've had a consistent. So we switched to maybe it wasn't that. Maybe it wasn't that the one after. It's the same font, but so we did switch to a consistent logo.
Yeah,
About 2000 or so.
That's fantastic. Do you have a favorite amongst these, Joel?
I like the Doctor Who. That was done by Tommy Edwards, who's actually at the show.
Yeah.
That was commissioned specifically. I like the Alan Moore one because it's fun. So we took an old photograph from about 1912, and a friend of mine stuck his head on there.
Oh my gosh.
And I like the Alan Moore one, because that was very different. The circus post, the one at the top, the second row, the first row, the fourth one across. Because it was very different. We always like to experiment with our covers and do stuff other people did. And the Grendel one I quite like as well. I remember I had to pulp the whole run of that because the printer made a massive cock up. So we had to reprint them all. But no, they all have something, I think, visually tried. And it's so weird to look at the first issue. It's so primitive now, and it looks like an archaeological dig. And talking about this ancient artifact.
Do you have some in your office? You have to
I have
buy
it
it off
on
eBay.
No, I have a complete set,
Yeah,
actually, of every issue we've ever done
Yeah.
at home.
Oh, that's great. That's fantastic. As we, one of the things that we want to talk about is not only,
I'm gonna
can you
move
speak
on.
to this?
I mean-
Yeah, why don't you keep going? Yeah.
I mean, last year was our first anniversary. We did put out a book. Actually, we're going to give a copy away to to a person we pick at random from the audience today. So we did an anniversary book, which was a mix of reprints and new material, which we put out. We did a paperback and a hardcover, because last year was our 30th anniversary, and we wanted to commemorate it with something sort of special. So that's a Bill Sienkiewicz, Jimi Hendrix piece, and that's a Frank Miller and Marv Sin City piece. So,
Just beautiful.
but I've also got a selection of pages. This is some quotes
Yeah.
from people in the industry. Very, very kindly gave us some incredible quotes.
Yeah, I always like that J.H. Williams one. Tripwire is always well-researched and enthusiastic by people who truly care about the importance of story. It's analytical without losing heart. What a great testament to your efforts.
Yeah, no, we're very lucky. Like Guillermo del Toro gave us some quotes. In the latest issue, we did a piece about Jason the Argonauts, it's his anniversary. Both him and Richard Taylor, he runs Weta, which is Peter Jackson's special effects company. So we're very lucky. We have people who continue to support us.
Yeah, fantastic. Good. You want to go one more?
I will. So this is the layouts from the last coach of the mag. What we've done, we did a 101 greatest comic artists of all time on the website, and then we repurposed it for the print mag. And so this is a selection of a few people. Tim sadly left us last year, Fiona Staples. So this is a real mix. Myself and Andy put this list together, and there was a lot of back and forth discussing who should be in here and where they should sit. And it was a very difficult, but we're very proud because it celebrates comic history, which we're all part of. We're part of celebrating comic history.
Yeah. Rob Selkowitz, weren't you just commenting on Sid Short's inking in a public forum recently?
Really?
Yeah, all of this stuff is widely discussed online, so, yeah.
Yeah, just fantastic.
So there's that. And then this is from the last issue, the thing about UK indie comics, because there's a very vibrant UK indie comics scene, which started with Brian Talbot, with Luther Arkwright, Paul Briss, Rudy Kane, and Jack Staff. And so there's a photo of Thought Bubble, which is the big show we do in Harrogate every November, which has a huge... So the UK indie scene is massive, and it's not discussed that much over here, so we wanted to shine a light on it. So we interviewed certain people who Hocus Pocus, it was a British indie comic. And this is an anniversary piece about Marvel Knights. Marvel Knights was the imprint started by Jimmy Palmiotti and Joe Quesada back in 25 years ago last year. So
1999.
thank you.
98.
Yeah,
25
98.
years ago?
98.
That's amazing.
But a lot of the work that they did for Marvel Knights still, it still heavily influences a lot of the stuff that Marvel does now. The things like the Echo TV series that was created during the Marvel Knights run that David Mack did. And it's kind of these two guys they've gone on to be huge industry figures. But back then they were less experienced. But we just wanted to. We always try and cover things like anniversaries. And then we got this was Tiny with Dial of Destiny, which is a piece looking back at the 4 Indiana Jones films. And then this was a piece about Manhunter, because this year is the 5th anniversary of Archie Goodman and Simon's Manhunter.
Can you remind us what Manhunter is, especially?
Oh, cool. Okay, Manhunter was a very important series. In fact, Andy, if you want to take that.
Yeah.
As you wrote
yeah,
the piece.
Andy.
Well, me and John are both big fans. I mean, basically speaking, it was one of the first things I read back in the day. But it hasn't aged, it hasn't dated. It's still one of the most important things that happened in that year. And it was just a question of what it brought stylistically to the medium, along with so much other content and style, and also the way that it was shot. It was framed, camera angles, etc. It was a step forward, I would say, in the medium. And basically speaking, we just wanted to mention you know, how Walt Simonton's career took off from that, how important Archie Goodwin was as an editor, as a creator, as an inspiration to so many other people in the business, and how much missed he was. In fact, Walt Simonton mentioned that, no, you haven't mentioned Archie enough in this article. I need you to add a little bit more to
We
it.
asked them to amend it.
Yeah, so, you know, come on. He still reveres him, and that's generally how it is. He was such a pivotal figure at the time, and without him and without DC allowing this to happen, you know, we wouldn't have got something which has been so influential. I suspect it's perfectly obvious. It's manifestly obvious that it would have been hugely influential on Frank Miller. 5 years later, you had his Daredevil, and you know how influential that was.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a very important bit of work. It's still something I read every year. I think it's a fantastic bit of work, and it's still, you know, it's still very relevant, I would say.
And it takes his cue from the newspapers as well. Walt Simonson is a big fan of Jim Holdaway, who was a Monty Blaze artist. And you know, the thing about Manhunter, what's amazing about it is they're able to tell, you know, a lot of story in such a small space.
Right.
They're incredibly condensed. It's like an exercise in kind of condensed storytelling.
Yeah. Was it originally
I
a
remember reading it back in the day, and it's one of the comics that made you feel smart for reading it. It's to this day one of the most literate and sophisticated things to ever appear in comics, in superhero comics for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, they'd already sort of done that with reduced page counts in the early 70s. They already had to sort of figure out how to cram so much story into 8 pages. I mean, Bob Haney was the master of that on Brave and the Bold, but this in particular, yeah, this was such a leap. I mean, there really is so much story in so little panels, so few panels. And in a way, you could call it like film editing. You know, jump shots, cuts, etc.
It's very cinematic.
It is very cinematic, and that was probably the key thing about it.
Yeah, you can hear the passion with which you talk about this old series. That artist, Walter Simonson, did he ever go on to do anything?
Oh no. I think he went to work for I'm not sure. Insurance company.
Insurance company, yeah. Well, I'm sure he did very well.
Yeah. So that's, you know, we like to look at the past and we try to contextualize it and remind people why this is important. I mean, in the same issue we have a piece, a tribute to Archie Goodwin. We want to remind people how important this man was. He was an editor, a writer, a cartoonist. He had the best taste of almost any editor, you know, working comics at the time. A lot of huge artists who went on to massive careers. They owe their careers to Archie Goodwin.
Yeah,
And,
I guess the key thing is because he died so long ago, we're just here to remind people, that's all.
Exactly. So you shouldn't forget.
Our soul Geith is sort of to remind people, you know, all these legends who may be left in the slipstream of pop culture, which don't want to be forgotten.
Because people are using that old cliche of standing on the shoulders of giants.
Exactly.
You know, people are standing on the shoulders of Goodwin and Simonson as well.
Yeah.
And I don't want to cast aspersions about today's...
No, not at all.
Because I think there's great work out
Yes.
there, but I think the real care and concern for getting it right and doing it right was very prevalent then. It's a very good period, I thought, the early 70s in comics. There's so many other great bits. Marvel as well, like, you know, so many mavericks were turning up, and like Steve Gerber, for example, Engelhardt and so forth. You know, all these writers who came along and really...
They reinvented the medium.
Elevated it. That's the key thing.
Yeah, that's great. And of course, one of the things Tripwire, maybe this is a good time to get into it, one of the things Tripwire does very, very well is celebrate these old series that we're very passionate about, creators, initiatives. I'd like to talk about some of the other things that Tripwire does, but before we do that, I'd love to ask our panelists, maybe start at the far end, about how reporting on comics journalism has changed over the years. You know, I think when you showed that early version of Tripwire, that fanzine, you know, that was one thing, and I remember reading a lot of things like that in the day, but you know, and today when, you know, Forbes articles command eyeballs and people want to know more, how might we understand the way each of our panelists view comics reporting and what people want to understand about the industry and fandom today? Rob, we'll have you kick that off.
Yeah, so I mean, it's obviously the biggest evolution is, it used to be even, you know, 20 years ago that when comics were covered in mainstream publications, there were two stories. There was the, you know, hey, there's gold in your attic about collecting comics and the fact that the old books are worth something, and then there's the, you know, Zap Bam Pow, comics aren't just for kids anymore story, you know, where they would sort of condescend to notice that there were, you know, adult-oriented graphic novels and stuff. And maybe 20 years is a little too like that was in the 80s and 90s when I was growing up as a comics fan. The only dignity that was conferred upon us by mass media at that time was those kind of stories. And to read the real stuff, you had to get Comics Journal or Amazing Heroes or you know, like in the comics press. And there were people who were very serious. I was talking to Andrew earlier that I'm a big these days what I'm looking for mostly is a lot of old fanzines from the 60s. And I'm amazed when I find some of these and I'll read it, and the guy is giving like his recap of like the best comics of 1966, and it's like, okay, he's got like Steranko's Shield and like Fantastic Four, and then he's like, oh, and then there's this Western strip from France that I found called Blueberry, and like this artist is worth taking a look at it, and stuff like that. And I'm like,
amazing to look at that now.
it's amazing, and it's like, oh, they were talking about like Alex Toth war stories that were showing up in these books, and this guy's taste in reading this stuff in the moment is so good, and none of that was being widely reported. So growing up as a hardcore geek about this stuff, having the opportunity to write about this in mainstream publications, I want to bring that awareness forward. I want to make sure that we honor and recognize the people. Like I did an interview with Jeff Johns when the Stargirl series came out, and James Robinson was involved in that also. And I was talking to James, and I asked him about Archie Goodwin, and I think he was surprised because Archie Goodwin was James Robinson's mentor. Yeah, on Starman, and I think he was surprised to get a question like that from like a so-called mainstream journalist. But I wanted to make sure that like stuff like that gets into the stories, so that people that aren't familiar with our industry and stuff like that know that there's actual human beings that worked hard and were incredibly creative and supportive back before there was like a multi-zillion-dollar Marvel universe and the Eye of Sauron was on our industry. That you know, like so to keep that thread of continuity through it, I feel like that's part of my responsibility. And I know that there's other people like George Coustinus for the New York Times is another like you know, old time fan who brings that awareness. Douglas Wolk and all of these other people that have larger platforms for this stuff, to create to not write about it like we're visiting from another planet, but to actually have a inside perspective that's informed by some of the work that you guys do. You know, that's like day in and day out. That's what you're writing about. So that's kind of the way I want to approach it.
Yeah, that's a great insight. Maybe can we bob down here to Dan? And
Yes.
I'd love to understand, Dan, maybe the way you view comics